welcome into another episode of Life in Basketball. I'm your host, Jacob Lane, joined tonight by my co-host and producer, Alex Stengel, and we are really excited about our episode tonight and our guest. You hear me, if you listen into the Big Red Louie podcast all the time, talk about my time in high school. The guys like to give me a lot of grief for doing so. But one of the guys I got to know in high school is our guest tonight, and this is the first time I've actually gotten to speak with him. I guess you could call it face-to-face. It's virtual face-to-face for the first time in probably 7 or 8 years. But you guys might remember him. Yeah, it's been a long time. You guys might remember him. You might not. Kameron Woods, he played at Eastern High School here in Louisville before going to play for Coach Brad Stevens at Butler from 2011, 2015. Led the Big East in rebounding in Butler's first 2 seasons in the conference, and then went on to play for the Oklahoma City Blue in the NBA G League, and is now an assistant coach, one of the youngest assistant coaches in the league, I would have to imagine. Kameron, welcome into the show. Thanks for joining us. How are you, my friend?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me. Been a long time. Me and you have had a lot of deep conversations at the Eastern High School lunch table.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah, man. Life comes at you fast sometimes, man. It's crazy to see. You know, I for the last couple of weeks when the basketball tournament was on, obviously we've been following Remy pretty closely and talking about that a lot. And we actually had Coach Mack on about a month ago, and one of my first questions was asking him about Remy and kind of in his college career. And what a cool experience it must have been for you. We'll get into this a little bit more, but you got to play against Remy for 2 seasons in the Big East. Like, how crazy is that, man? Like, that is Louisville, Kentucky for you right there.
Yeah, it was crazy. Played against him. Also played a game against Lionel when he was at IUPUI. I think it was my freshman or sophomore year. So it's crazy, man. A public school like that had really good players, and we all were in the state of Indiana for a little while. So it was cool. We still talk a good amount these days. So, yeah, good times.
It's funny to hear all the Eastern love because I went to Seneca. But no, the fact that anybody from not Trinity or St. X, when you hear awesome success stories like that, I'm already on board. So especially with Butler being such a cool school to follow. When I was in school, I went to WKU. So we were never making waves in basketball in my 4 years, but we definitely followed you guys. And I know it was right before you got there, but I want to know first, before we jump into all that, with you guys going to high school together, Jacob's told me, like he said, he brings up all the glory days. What is your scouting report now that you're a coach? I just want to hear what a scouting report looks like on a player, specifically Jacob, from what you remember from all the court time in high school.
From Jacob? If I'm guarding Jacob, my scouting report?
Just in general, man, what's the breakdown? Like, what do I do well? What did I suck at? Like, give me what you remember.
You give him time and space, he's pretty good. You got to pressure him. A lot of pressure. But if you give him time and space, I mean, he can make a shot. He knows the game. He'll make the right pass, but you got to just disrupt him. You put a good athlete on him, I think he'll struggle. So you got
I tell this story all the time, Cameron. So when we played that season together, your dad would put me in just to shoot. And as soon as I would come in, the defense were like, oh, it's over. Just get in his face and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's it right there. If you give him time and space, good.
I'm putting it down in my notes right now. He's just Jacob's great at horse. And that's what I'm going to end that at.
That's what he does.
Oh, great, man. All right, well, let's jump in, Cam. So one of the things I don't know if people know about you, and maybe those who followed you at Butler know this, but your dad was a big-time college basketball player in the 80s, probably a big influence on your life as a young kid. But take me back to your childhood, what you remember first about the game of basketball, and just kind of how you were influenced by your father and growing into the basketball player that you became.
Well, I mean, you're right. He played at Tennessee. He was a good player. I mean, you play at Tennessee in the 80s, you got to be pretty good. I mean, and he played on a really good high school team. He played high school basketball with Muggsy Bogues in Baltimore. So he knew the game. He always loved the game. When I was a baby in my mom's stomach, I guess one of the stories he always tells people is he used to rub a Nerf basketball on our stomach while me and my brother were in there because I'm a twin. So I guess I was in the stomach just reaching for that thing because as soon as I came out, it's all I wanted to do. So growing up, I mean, I always had a ball in my hand, always was dribbling, trying to play. I wasn't very good. But I always wanted to be good, and I always talked about the game to the point where he used to cut me off from talking about basketball after, 8 o'clock. He'd be like, all right, man, that's enough for the day. But, yeah, I mean, that's where it all started. I mean, he wore number 31. That's why I wore number 31 throughout my whole career. And I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to go to Tennessee. But, yeah, that's kind of where it started. He put the ball in my hands, and I just never let it go.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time when I talk about any term of Kentucky high school basketball, or we dive into anything like this. But I truly believe that team from Eastern in 2011 has been the best team since that time. So I say if Eastern were to play anybody that's won state since then, they'd win. But what did that team teach you about what it was like to play on a championship caliber team? Because obviously you were just a few seconds away from moving into one of the most heartbreaking basketball games I have ever seen in my entire life. But that team won a lot of games, beat a lot of really good schools from out of state. Obviously, you had 4 or 5 guys, if not more, play Division I. But how much of high school basketball kind of shaped you and how you grew into being like somebody who could compete on a championship team?
Yeah, man. I mean, when I think about my career and I think about the player that I ended up being and the coach that I am now, I mean, it all dates back to really middle school when I didn't make the middle school team, and then high school, man, because everybody wants – I mean, it's kind of cliche, but everybody wants to be the guy, and we had a lot of guys. I mean, Remy could put the ball in the basket, Lionel could, Byron, Chris. I mean, our whole roster – I mean, our senior year of varsity was pretty much all seniors because we just dominated that team. And what it taught me was just that, if you want to be good and you want to play at a high level – you got to figure out what it is that you do and how you can contribute, because everybody can't go get 30. Everybody can't go score 20, and everybody can't, you got to figure out how you're going to get on the floor. And as a guy who didn't make his middle school team and was probably arguably like 4th or 5th best on that team, I had to find out how I was going to play and what value I brought. And that's how I coach these guys today. And that's just how I see the game now. That team meant a lot, man. We were really good, but everybody played a role. We knew night in and night out what all we had to do individually and how that helped us as a team.
And so,
Alex, there you go. I was gonna say, we still got you?
No, well, there is a mute button when you're having virtual conversations, so I do apologize. But talking about your high school days and the team you guys had, what was it like being an underrated player coming out of high school, and how did that really impact your recruiting outlook and how you viewed the next level?
Yeah, I mean, high school basketball has changed a lot, but back then, I mean, I wasn't really into recruiting. I didn't know where I was going to play. I like you guys said, I was kind of a late bloomer, but it's really because I just got on the scene late. Like I think I wasn't like playing varsity until my junior year. So, it's kind of late when you're talking about picking up offers or trying to be a Division I basketball player. And the way it affected me the most was, I mean, I wasn't like putting up big numbers in high school, Jacob. We used to talk about that all the time. Like I wasn't putting up big numbers. I wasn't like somebody that, unless you really knew the game, was like, wow, that dude's impacting the game. So what it affected was my ability to get on a good AAU team. Like Remy was on the Shining Stars. They were really good. They played in really big tournaments. Lionel was similar. They played in big tournaments, Armand kind of. But what it did was it just like, luckily, my dad was working over at Basketball Academy. That's what it was called back then. And he was able to put me on a team and put us in some tournaments, because that's really it, man. If you can just go get seen, you're going to get seen by people who really know the game and who can really evaluate what guys are bringing to the game. But it's the same thing. Like I got on that team. I was one of the better players on that team, but Byron was still there. Our mom was still there. And I really played the same role that I did in high school. But because of that, I was able to be seen. And it's like, once you're able to be seen, that's when things took off. It's not that like my jump shot developed or I was rebounding a lot better. It's like I got in an area where I was able to be seen and be evaluated by some pretty high-level coaches and high-level thinkers and evaluators. And people saw the value that I brought to the game. And it just kind of exploded from there.
Yeah, and one of the coaches who got involved in when your recruiting really started to take off was Coach Stevens and Butler, who joined a list of, I was looking through it today, of some pretty notable mid-major programs. And in any other given year, Butler might be just another school, but you're talking about a team then that was coming off back-to-back championship appearances. And so you go from being a guy that's fourth or fifth option on your high school team to going to play for a national championship caliber basketball team. I can't imagine what that was like the day you showed up, because I remember, Cam, you were like maybe 175 pounds soaking wet, like maybe on a good day, but you had those arms and you could really, impact the game defensively. So what was that like for you, not only in the recruiting process? Was there kind of like some starstruckness, like in seeing Coach Stevens, who you've been watching on TV? And then what did he kind of describe what your role was going to look like short and long term?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I remember when he called the first time. I was on my way back from an AAU tournament, and I was probably carpooling with like 8 people. It was one of those things. We were just driving back from Ohio, and he called me. And, I had talked to a lot of people, texted a lot of people at that time. They weren't the first ones to call at all when things started heating up. But I just remember him calling and saying who he was. And that first conversation, I really don't remember much else, because I was just like, oh, my goodness, this dude is – if you remember at that time, that dude was like a star. It was like, This dude is – best coaches in the game. He was young, he was smart, and his teams played really hard. So I remember sitting there and just being in awe of the conversation. One of the things I always tell people I appreciate about him, and it's still true to this day, is just like very genuine. Everything he says is genuine, which in recruiting, what I learned is that's not always true. Like, I was 175 pounds. When I stepped on campus at Butler, I was 177 pounds. So, I was getting phone calls and people were telling me either I wasn't going to be able to play for a couple of years, I needed to redshirt, gain some weight, I wasn't ready for Division I yet, which is fine. I was happy to be getting scholarship offers, but I did want to play. And he was pretty honest. He was like, look, I like your frame. I'm not going to tell you need to redshirt. I think that you have a chance to play right away. I think there are things you can bring to the table. And he would go in detail about the smallest plays that I made in a game. And that's what stood out. But I remember going on campus for the first time and doing a meeting. I drove up there, was just in shock, walking around campus with this guy. And I went on 2 visits there and committed. I didn't even take all my official visits, because I was like, this guy believes in me. He knows me. He knows what I can bring to the game. And they just went to back-to-back Final Fours, and their team is really good. So, that was a no-brainer for me. As far as his vision for me, he was pretty honest with that one too. In high school, Jacob, we used to talk about this. I played the 5. I was like, I don't really think I'm a 5, but that was what I was needed to do. He was like, I think you're more of a 3, more of a 4. If you continue to develop your jump shot, but the biggest part is we want to get you on campus and kind of let you compete, and you figure that out for yourself. We're not going to put you in a box. And that's what stood out to me, because everybody else was like, you're a 4, you're a 5, and there were some pretty big name schools, Clemson, Miami, how do you say no to those powerhouses when I'm the 5th option? But it was like, I want to be able to explore and continue to develop my game. And he's got to be doing something right up there. Those guys had just come off a national championship. And then after I committed, they went right back to another one. So, as you can imagine, when I got to school as a freshman, it was like walking into a party. But it was. He's to this day one of the most genuine I know, and he's obviously still one of the best to do it. So, I don't regret that decision at all.
But that, as awesome as it was with Brad Stevens, we know that didn't last your full 4 years, right? And so when you look at your career at Butler in its entirety, your junior and senior seasons are the ones that really jump out on paper. And so what changed for you, essentially becoming that role player that you just talked about, that you preach as a coach? What really changed for you? What was the switch that you went from role player to all of a sudden, you're just rebounding the hell out of the ball every game, to where you're a consistent starter and producer?
Yeah, it's crazy because I played there for 4 years. I played for 3 different coaches, 3 different conferences. A boatload of different teammates. Butler, when I got there, was pretty stable. People didn't leave early. People didn't transfer. Coaches stayed. It was like the most stable place ever.
But they also didn't go to back-to-back national championships at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
crazy. I mean, walking on campus, I remember I was with my mom, and I was like, Mom, look, I don't have the guts to ask him this, but you have to ask him if he's going to leave because this dude's the hottest thing in basketball right now. And, like, Indiana comes calling, what's he going to do? And so my mom asked him, and he said on the visit, I promise you I will not leave for another college. So I was like, wow, all right. I mean, I guess he didn't lie.
No.
Yeah.
But, it's crazy to think about because the dude was you almost would have had to be naive to think he was going to be there all 4 years as good as he was as a coach. So, and as he still is. But the biggest thing that changed for me was, I started my first game ever at Butler at the 3. I ended up transitioning to be more of a 4 my sophomore year. And then going into my junior year, we moved into the Big East. Our best player, Roosevelt Jones, gets hurt in Australia. I was going to be the starting 4. Well, now I got to move to the 3, right? But it's the same thing that's kind of carried me through high school. What I learned in high school was that, okay, you look around, I'm still not the best player, but there are things I can bring to the table. Rebounding's always one of them. If you can rebound the ball, you can play anywhere because people need somebody who can get rebounds. And everything else came with it. But that's the biggest thing, just like understanding what you bring to the table. We had good players on my senior year team. Rodney Clark played there as a sophomore. That dude's going to have the ball in his hand, and he's going to get a lot of shots. I still want to play. So, you got to figure out whatever that is. I think what happened my junior and senior year, though, is that I started to rely more on my defense, being somebody who could guard one of the better players on the other team. And that's how I kind of expanded my game from being somebody who was a really good rebounder, good teammate, to being somebody who could rebound and do something else, which was guard the other team, better player, and that kept me on the floor. And honestly, it junior and senior year got me thinking about whether I could play professional because it really didn't cross my mind the first couple of years. I was enjoying life at a Division I school of a team that was good. Junior and senior year, I was like, I think I can keep going a little bit longer, but we had 2 different coaches in my junior year to my senior year. There was a lot of turnover, but as I reflect on it, it's like, that's the pro game, so if you want to go be a pro or you want to go coach in the pros, that stuff happens overnight. It happens every year, every day. Somebody's leaving and somebody new is coming in. So it's like all of those experiences together just like kind of molded my mind and molded me to become like somebody who, maybe it's the wrong word, but it's like numb to all of that, all the movement, all the noise, whatever you call it. So it's all been really helpful to where I am now.
So I think that there's a lot of people in this market who don't know a lot about the G League and the NBA feeder system and just the way that they're set up because, obviously with no NBA team here in Louisville, there's really no built up fan base or audience. And so, you've got Louisville fans cheering for Donovan Mitchell, Kentucky fans for all those guys. But you're in the G League. You're in this league of guys ranging from 18 to in their late 30s. You've got guys that are hanging on to careers. You've got guys that are from the NBA trying to develop. You've got guys that are, trying to just move up and get their next paycheck. And it makes it just this super competitive basketball league that is really kind of hard to come by anywhere else. But tell me about your time in the G League. What do you remember most? Like, what stands out? What was your favorite part of it? Because, you hear all these stories about long bus rides from North Dakota and weird places to other towns where you're playing in front of 4,000 fans on a Thursday night. What's that like, man?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit just about every nail on the head. I mean, it's the most unique experience you could have as a professional because it's in the States, I didn't want to go overseas, so it hit that box for me. I kind of wanted to stay close just because I always have. But it's really unique. My experiences as a player was really good because, once I decided I wanted to go pro, I started fielding some offers from overseas. I didn't really want to take them. I remember I got a call from my agent, and he was like, Oklahoma City's interested in flying you out there. They're not going to guarantee you a spot on their D League team, but they want you to kind of work out with some of the NBA guys and just kind of have you around. So I flew out there, And they were like, yeah, I mean, not a lot of NBA guys are in town right now. It's like, you know, maybe Serge Ibaka and like some other guys. If you remember that team, that was a Serge.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll go out there. I got off the plane, drove to the facility. They were like, yeah, we just got a couple guys in town. You know, we'll just play some 3-on-3, whatever. All the Thunder coaches are in town. You know, just kind of work out. So I'm like, wow, this is a really good opportunity. And I walk in the facility and like Kevin Durant's there. I mean, Westbrook's in the building, you know, and it's like 3-on-3. My first day in the building, I'm guarding Kevin Durant. You
Just
know,
a couple
like,
guys.
I was like, wow. I remember, I mean, and he absolutely scored in every which way possible. It was like, welcome to
Yeah,
guarding.
bro. All right. So here's the example, Cam. This is Alex for reference. This is Kevin Durant probably guarded by Cam. Is Cam guarding me? Like, I'm not scoring. Cam, I don't know about you, but Kevin was probably dropping buckets on you left and right.
Every which way. Post up, jump shot, you know, cross you. I mean, it was nuts. The dude is unbelievable. I called my dad afterwards, and I was like, you will not believe what just happened. I just guarded this dude, and my dad was like, don't be a fan. Like, you got to – come on, if you want to be a pro. This is Kevin Durant. That's not happening. So that was a little sidetrack, but Oklahoma City, no joke. The biggest thing I was looking for when I left Butler is I felt like I was a part of a really good program that was really well structured, that like you walk in every day and you have things outlined that you want to get done. And Oklahoma City mirrors that. That's what I loved about it. That's why I stayed, and that's why I'm still here. Is like they run this place really well. Like when you talk about the G League, I'd argue there's not many teams doing it like we do it here. You know, our G League facility is 10 minutes away, maybe less than that, from the Thunder practice facility, and everything that's at the Thunder practice facility is at our facility. So the way they look at this is like, if we're going to invest money into this and we're going to send our NBA guys down to the G League, then we want them to have the same resources and opportunities to grow and develop as they would if they were if they were traveling with the NBA team full time. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, they have nutritionists in the building, which was a big part of my development, obviously. I mean, it hasn't really worked. I haven't gained a lot of weight, but I mean, everything that you could want possibly to get that done, they have it here. Again, like you said, the G League is really unique. I played with Jeremy Pargo, or Gennaro Pargo, sorry, who's now an assistant Blazers, right? This guy was like on the back end of his NBA career trying to make a comeback. Really good player, played with outstanding players. I played with Marcus Teague, who was a draft pick by the Bulls.
Yeah.
My favorite player of all time, Kevin Garnett. Like, I played with JP Tokido. We played against him in college when he was at North Carolina. I mean, it's just like the amount of guys you play with, they range from all these different experiences and walks of life. And here we are thrown in a building trying to win games for the G League, but also what's unique about it is, you know, none of them want to come back. You know, everybody either wants to get a big contract overseas or they want to go to the NBA. So what makes it unique is that you got these guys who are bussing all over the place and have roommates on the road and all have different things they want to achieve individually, but we got to figure out how to come together and win games at a high level, because there's high-level players here in the G League. So, I mean, it's one of the craziest experiences you could have as a player, because you're with all these guys that you form a relationship with, but everybody's trying to go somewhere else. So it's like you got to figure out how you can play all these different fields but still get to the same common goal.
Yeah, how do you feel like you played? Because, I mean, I've followed you pretty closely the 2 years you played, just because, you know, somebody you went to high school with having the chance to make it to the NBA is pretty damn cool, which I thought you were going to get drafted. I remember you worked out, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you work out with Boston late with Coach Stevens? Or there was a team that had you in late. And I remember me and some friends were watching that night like, damn, let's see if somebody at 58, 59, 60 takes Cam. But you go into Oklahoma City, and what I remember, man, you played really, really well, like really well.
It's crazy, man, because it's the same thing that it was like in high school. You know, I made that team my rookie year. You know, and honestly, I was just happy to be on the team. I was like, I'm getting a check. I'm playing with some guys that have like a lot of clout around their name. And, you know, I started out playing the 4 or 5, because if you watch my highlights in college, I caught a lot of lobs. I got a lot of rebounds. You know, I didn't shoot a lot of jump shots towards the end, so that's kind of where I fell. But we, like, had a guy come in and work out who was a wing player, and I wanted to work out with them. And they saw me handle the ball, and they were like, wow, this guy can, like, maybe play on the perimeter. So then they started developing my jump shot. And by the end of the year, I was starting on our G League team at the 3. So it was similar. It was like, I was like, wow, I feel like I got pretty good traction here. They liked me there. I did all the right things off the floor. And I was able to really develop. It's crazy you say that. There was a point where I thought I was pretty close, but that's just the nature of the league, man. I played with Alex Caruso in the G League my second year. Yeah, my second year. Thought he was a good player. This dude's playing with LeBron and Anthony Davis with the Lakers right now. Like, the G League is unique because it's like a lot of these guys can play. It's all about opportunity. And if you're ready, when and if your name is called. And it's like, who would have known if my name would have ever been called? You always feel like you're pretty close. But it's not unfortunate, but my career just took a different path, but I had a good career down there. I shot more threes here than I did in college. I think I was like 38% from the corners, which is where I wanted.
Man. So you got a jump shot. Okay, yeah. I didn't know that.
Corners are a little bit shorter. I was trying to fall in that 3-and-D mode, guard the other team's best player, stand in the corner on offense. I was making them at a decent clip, but
I taught you well, man. Look at you. I taught you well.
Those talks at the lunch table, man. we had a lot of those conversations. So yeah, I feel like I was gaining some traction, but you just never know, man. This league is so tough, and there's so many good players out there. Each year that you stick around, there's just younger guys filtering in, and a team is most likely going to take a shot at that younger guy, because they got a little bit more runway than the older guy. So that's where I felt like I got, but
Yeah. So take me in the last year for you, because, it took me by surprise that you decided to hang up the sneakers and put the suit on and go into coaching after playing so well. But I know you've got a family now, that you're married with a daughter. So I'm sure that your family probably had some impact there. Take me into what it was like, deciding to hang it up and take the next step in your life.
Yeah. So when I got out of college, I was like, I signed, typically from what I learned, guys sign like 3-year deals with their agent, right? So I signed a 2-year deal just from the standpoint of, I knew I was going to stay in the States. And especially once I got to Oklahoma City, I was like, I want to give this thing 2 years. I want to see how close I am. And then I'll make a decision after my second year. So my first year was awesome. I shot like 38% from the corners from 3. That summer, I stayed in Oklahoma City. They kept me in their facilities all summer. So I was working out with their guys all summer. I played summer league for the first time. I was developing. They were investing a lot of resources into me. I was going to become this 3-and-D player, who could make shots and guard and rebound. So in my second year, I didn't shoot it as well. The corners were still good, which was the spot I wanted to shoot it from, but I didn't shoot it as well, and my numbers dropped from my first year. At the same time, I had met my wife. And after that season ended, my contract was up with my agent. So I was like, I just want to take some time to figure out what's going on. At that time, my wife got pregnant with our daughter. And one of the things about the G League, which is, it's not unique to any other professional league, but you only get paid during the season, and the season's only 6 months long. Well, my wife had a son at the time, and then she got pregnant with my daughter. So, now I'm looking at my family, and it's like, I got to figure out how I can make money all year long to provide for my family and still do what it is that I love. And at the time, I just looked at my situation, and I was like, I'm not as close as I want to be to the NBA. And like I told you, I just felt like each year that you wait, every year you were seeing a guy that was at the back end of his career that, you could argue had tried it too long and was missing out on too many other opportunities. So it was a decision that I made based off of that. Like, I want to be able to provide for my family now. I needed to get my household in order. I needed to get married. I needed to make sure my daughter was coming into a stable situation. And at the same time, I didn't feel like I was close enough basketball-wise to keep the risk going of not having money to be able to provide for my family. So I was like, I took a year. We moved to Atlanta. I got to spend a lot of time with my family. I was working a 9 to 5. I was a IT tech recruiter, if you know anything about that. And I took that year off. And, it's crazy because I think about that a lot, especially when I came back and got into coaching. And it was like, man, I can still do it. But, I'm a part of a great organization. Like you said, one of the youngest coaches in the G League. I get a ton of experience. I don't regret it at all. But it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make because it's like you never know when your name's going to get called. You just never do. That's just something that people can't tell you. They can't predict it. It's like one day you're averaging 8 points a game at Eastern. The next day I have 27 Division I scholarship offers. You just don't know. So I don't regret it, but it was a tough decision. It took a lot of time and I had to weigh a lot of different options, but that was the reasoning behind it.
Well, we've got one more question here before we move into the last part. It's more of a rapid fire, but I got to ask you, you're probably home. You're invested in the bubble right now, the NBA restart. I'm sure you're watching your guys for Oklahoma City. You've got, I think, 4 guys that are on that roster that played with you, Lou Dort, Kevin Hervey, Devon Hall, maybe one other that I'm missing, but you've got to be invested in them. How much have you watched, and how far do you think those guys can go?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the unique part about the job is I've worked and been around all those guys. So Lou Dort obviously started with us. Deontay Burton was down here with us. Devon Hall, Kevin Hervey. I spent time with all those guys. But when you look at their roster, I mean, when our season's over with the Blue, we just go join the Thunder. So I mean, I've spent time working out with Andre Robertson. When he was getting back healthy. I've spent time with Steven Adams, Chris Paul. We talk fantasy football. I mean, it's like all those guys. You spend time with them. So I watch every game. We stream every practice, so we get to watch them practice. And any assignments that they have, I mean, they send us assignments to break down, look at certain numbers when they're running certain
sets. So you're still working then? You're just coaching from home?
Yeah, we're still working. And then the other thing that we're doing too is there's injured guys that stay back. So like Isaiah Roby played in Nebraska. He's in town. So he works out on the floor probably 4 times a week, and I'm there for that too. So we're still getting like actively tested. We got to be tested before we go in the building. But yeah, we're still working. I mean, we have like company or like league, not team-wide calls basically, once a week with Sam, where we'll just kind of talk about what's going on and everything like that. But no, I'm invested. They look good, man. What a year it's been for them, because it's like nobody was expecting them to be where they're at right now. And then they have this hiatus and then they come out and they still look pretty good. But yeah, we watch them all. We watch them all, and we still have work that we're expected to do with them and for them while they're up there. So
last question before we get into this not corny term that we've dubbed before the buzzer, which is what he just mentioned, the lightning round. It was literally the best, worst thing we could come up with. But let me just ask you before we get into that, just a broad level question. How has basketball what about basketball has really impacted you the most in your life?
Man, that's a deep question, man, because I think about that a lot actually, as I am now a parent, and I'm like trying to, I have a 9-year-old son now. So it's like, as I'm trying to help him navigate being 9, and trying to figure out what it is that he likes so that he can become passionate about it and pursue it. But it's like basketball for me is like, it's what got me out of bed. It's what like motivated me to do something, and it's what like has got me to where I'm at right now. So, basketball has meant a lot to me. I don't know where I'd be without it. I don't know if I would have met my wife. I don't know if I'd have had these kids. But it's crazy because that's what that's all I try to do now as a parent is like figure out what it is that Jacob, I'm sure Alex, I don't know if you have kids or not, but it's like figure out what my kids are interested in and just support them, because my parents did that for me. And it's like, if I wouldn't have had that support system, I don't know if I would have tried out for the high school basketball team after I got cut, because I would have been like, man, I'm just over that. You know what I mean? It's like if I wouldn't have had that, then I probably wouldn't have tried to play professionally. I would have just quit. And if I wouldn't have played professionally, I wouldn't have this shirt on right now. So it's like basketball to me is everything. So I carry that when I coach, when I'm talking to these guys, you can figure out pretty quickly who's like really passionate about it, who's not. And you don't coach them any differently, but it's just like you just have a better understanding of why they're here and why they walk and talk the way they do. And it's how I parent my kids, right? It's like my son has played, 1,000 different sports right now, and he hasn't really found one that he loves yet. But it's like we're going to keep trucking until we find out whatever it is, because I know what that'll do for you. If you find something you love, it'll take you wherever you want to go, So that was kind of a broad answer, but that's kind of what it's meant for me.
No, that was a great answer. Absolutely.
That's got to be the best answer we've ever had on this show. So I appreciate the honesty, though. That's a great answer.
I would hope so, man. After everything you talked, I would hope so. I'm at least top 5. Help me, Jacob. That's why when you wrote me, I was like, oh, man, I have to do that. I have to. I've got to jump online. So,
yeah, well, I appreciate it.
I was going to say, we're definitely glad you did. But, all right, so now it is getting down to business before the buzzer. So it's literally just going to be rapid-fire questions, probably just a minute long. We try to keep them fun but quick. So first one, by me, favorite venue you've played in?
College or pros?
Either one.
Go for it.
Probably either Assembly Hall at Indiana or I think it's called the Pavilion at Villanova. It's really small, but man, they beat our doors off. They blew the doors off of them. But I remember putting my clothes on after the game, and I was like, that was fun. And when we got blasted, there's got to be one.
All right, next one. Most difficult player to guard during your college career?
Ooh. Josh Smith from Georgetown. You remember him? Big Josh Smith.
Oh, yeah. Big dude. Big guy.
It's funny because we became friends after the game because there was a pick. I jumped center and he jumped center. I'm super skinny. He's big. And somebody tweeted the picture and said it looks like the number 10, because it's me. But I played the 5 in that game, and that was like ridiculous. Impossible for me to stop that dude from doing anything. So it'd probably be him.
That might have been the best quote we've had on this podcast so far. So this might be a layup for you. One coach you try to replicate your coaching style after?
It's funny. It's 2 of them. The thing I take from Brad is just like his demeanor. I'm not like a big yeller. I don't let, really anything try to affect my demeanor because I think it rubs off on your team, good or bad. And then the other one is Mark Dagnall. It's who I played for in the G League. He's now an assistant with the Thunder. He is the same way. You can come in the gym. His team has lost 10 straight games. You won't know. I think that's the best thing you can do as a coach. It affects your team. Your team reads that, and if they look like if they can tell that you're off because of something reactional, then they're just like, this dude's tripping. Like, what's going on? So that's the biggest thing I try to take from those 2 guys.
All right, we've got a couple more here. The one time you remember getting dunked on the worst in college?
In college? I got dunked on pretty bad in the pros a couple of times. And in college –
who's the first person to come to mind, pro or college, that dunked on you that you remember like, damn, that was something?
Check Diallo. He plays for the Suns now. He was on with the Spurs. He went backdoor on somebody, and I was in help side, and elbow to the neck. All that. It was bad. That's the first one that came to mind. It was brutal. It was rough.
What do you consider the best game of your career? We'll end this on a high note for you.
One of them is the triple-double in high school. It was the first.
Okay, I got to ask you, who was it? Who was the first person before you to do it? Because I was telling Alex, I don't know who it was. It had to have been Rondo. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Rondo. I was the first one to do it. So that one sticks out for sure. And then, the other one is probably in college, senior night. We lost that game to Josh Smith and his boys. But, I had like 15 or 16 rebounds. I ended up being 1 rebound shy of being Butler's all-time leading rebounder. So, yeah,
damn, man.
All the
Alex, Alex, you think that Mikhail Cunningham stat is bad for Louisville, where he didn't, qualify for the QBR last year? How about one rebound away from being the program's all-time rebounding leader?
I would go back and try to see if you got any like grad transfer eligibility maybe or fifth year.
I think about that every morning when I wake up. When I open my eyes, I'm like, dang, I was one rebound away from being all-time. And then I go, hey. But, yeah, those two come to mind for sure. The high school one's big time because, I mean, triple-double in high school, and that was with blocks. I mean,
I was going to say it's got to be blocked because it wasn't assists. I know that.
I didn't have the ball enough. Do you remember I used to just roam around the paint. I mean, I wasn't really guarding anybody. Coach Couch was just like, go punch everything. And Remy and them just get blown by. They used to just do it on purpose to try to get me dunked on. But it wasn't happening.
That sounds like something y'all would have done to Armand, man. Like that's what that sounds like.
They used to say that in practice while we were practicing. Like, in the game, we're just going to let this guy go by us and see if he can dunk on Cam. And I used to be like, all right. Then there it was, triple-double. First one since it's been done since I've left either. I might be the last one to have a triple-double. I would hope so.
Crazy stuff, man. Well, Cam, this has been great. Thank you for jumping on with us and talking about your career because, like I said, man, I think you've got an interesting story. So everyone, Kameron Woods of the Oklahoma City Blue, former Butler star. Cam, thank you, man.